Krishna, 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 Krishna. Hey, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Buenos dias, señores y señores. Uh, Today we're going to have Bhagavatam class, like every day, because we are immensely fortunate. If you just give me a second to find the verse, which I believe is Canto 7, Chapter 5, text number something. I can't remember. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Jaya Radha. How does that go? It's early. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Jaya Girivaradari Gopi Janna Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Vivajakacharya Asta Tarisata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Vivajakacharya Asta Tarisata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribo Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swamini Dhanamane Chari Purvaraksham Cha Bhakta Chara Pravinata Parartha Tapikarunyam Yasa Savej Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 5, text number something or other. Um, um, what is the text number? 15? 15. Usually we depend on Taraka Prabhu to tell us the text number. But that he's not signed into this Bhagavatam class gives the impression that perhaps the internet is down at Gita Nagari. Okay. Yes, 7th Canto, Chapter 5, text number 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Narada Uvacha Etavad Brahmana Yoktva Virarama Mahamati Tam Sani Bhartsya Kupitaha Sudino Rajasevaka Etavad Brahmana Yoktva Virarama Mahamati Tam Sani Bhartsya Kupitaha Sudino Rajasevaka Etavad Brahmana Yoktva Virarama Mahamati Tam Sani Bhartsya Kupitaha Sudino Rajasevaka. Would anybody else like to chant the verse?
Shri Naradovacha Aitavad Pamanayo Ira Rama Mahamatihi Tangsani Vatsya Kupita Sudino Rajasevakaha.
Thank you, Prabhu. Word for word translation says, Shri Narada Uvacha, Narada Muni said, Etavat, this much, Brahmanaya, unto the Brahmanas, the sons of Shukracharya, Uktva, speaking. The suffix aya means two, like Krim Krishnaya idam namama. Idam Krishna idam namama. I give this to Krishna, it is not for myself. So unto that person. So Prahlad Maharaj had spoken unto these Brahmanas, the sons of Shukracharya, Shanda and Amarka. Virarama became silent. Mahamatihi, Prahlad Maharaj, who possessed great intelligence. Tam, him, Prahlad Maharaj. Sanibhartsya, chastising very harshly. Kupitaha, being angry. Sudinaha, poor in thought, or very much aggrieved. Raja Sevakaha, the servants of King Hiranyakashipu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great Saint Narada Muni continued. The great soul, Prahlad Maharaj, became silent after saying this to his teachers, Shanda and Amarka, the seminal sons of Shukracharya. These so-called Brahmanas then became angry at him because they were servants of Hiranyakashipu. They were very sorry, and to chastise Prahlad Maharaj, they spoke as follows. They're sorry, meaning like they're very pathetic. Not sorry, like, oh, we're sorry that we tried to instruct you in the ways of the demons. They were just losers, and we're going to hear why. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word Shukra means semen. The sons of Shukracharya were Brahmanas by birthright, but an actual Brahmana is one who possesses the Brahminical qualities. The Brahmanas Shanda and Amarka, being seminal sons of Shukracharya, did not actually possess real Brahminical qualifications, for they engaged as servants of Hiranyakashipu. An actual Brahmana is very much satisfied to see anyone, not to speak of his disciple, become a devotee of Lord Krishna, which is interesting because Narada Muni is speaking this verse and he's speaking it about his disciple, Prahlad Maharaj. So he's glorifying his disciple, obviously very satisfied with Prahlad Maharaj's devotion. Such brahmanas are meant to satisfy the Supreme Master. A brahmana is strictly prohibited from becoming a servant of anyone else, for that is the business of dogs and shudras. A dog must satisfy his master, but a brahmana does not have to satisfy anyone. He is simply meant to satisfy Krishna. Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. That is the real qualification of a brahmana. Because Shanda and Amarka were seminal brahmanas and had become servants of such a master as Hiranyakashipu, they unnecessarily wanted to chastise Prahlad Maharaja. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjanam Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scham He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Brindavaneshwari Marishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So in this verse, Narada Muni is describing Chanda and Amarka, who were not happy to hear the wise instructions of Prahlad. In fact, they became angry and unnecessarily chastised Prahlad Maharaj because they weren't really Brahmanas, being servants of Hiranyakashipu instead of servants of Lord Krishna. They're not qualified to be Brahmanas and to be teachers. Brahmanas are very important in society because human life is meant for God realization, going back home, back to Godhead. It's not meant for becoming a royal edition of the animals. That does not require any instruction, does not require any guidance. It happens automatically. Base sense gratification happens automatically, sort of inbuilt in the bodies of everyone except for the Brahmanas. It does not require any training, does not require any teaching. But to remember one's position as an eternal servant of Shri Radha Krishna requires a bit of guidance to shake off many, many, many lifetimes of conditioning to try to enjoy this world and to enjoy this body. And so someone who can demonstrate and guide those on the path back home, back to Godhead are very important, and that's what the Brahmanas are meant to do. And that's why their qualifications are so important. That's why it's repeated throughout the Shastra in many, many places. What are the qualifications of a Brahmana? So that we can recognize and appreciate and inquire about devotional service from a Brahmana, ideally. And one who is employed and engaged in serving some other master besides Lord Krishna cannot teach very well because they will be compromised, being obligated to please their employer. That's a big problem. And we should make this very clear that it means being employed in teaching. Of course, we all need jobs, unfortunately, for better or for worse. So it's not talking about just some job, but a Brahmana cannot take payment and be employed in their service of teaching about Brahman, about the absolute truth, because then whatever they teach will be compromised in favor of whoever is employing them. Better for the Brahmana to live by begging and to accept some charity or even to just find discarded refuse food from some public market and to live on that than to take employment like Shanda and Amarka. Being employed by Hiranyakashipu, they, instead of teaching about Brahman, they're trying to teach Prahlad about how to manipulate people, how to dominate, how to destroy your enemies, how to lie, and how to be pretty much a typical politician. So this is not Brahman, and therefore it's a waste of what could be the potential to teach about Krishna. So instead, Prahlad Maharaj is teaching them about Krishna consciousness, but considering themselves puffed up, considering themselves brahmanas, even though they're disqualified, they became angry. They were very sorry or pathetic, and then unnecessarily chastised Prahlad Maharaj. And so this Shanda and Amarka example is still very common today. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of people who think themselves to be caste brahmanas, who think themselves to be superior to others by birth, and therefore unnecessarily chastise those who they consider below them. It's still very controversial in Asia that the caste system still exists in many places, and even when the Indian government takes census, it still asks people their caste as if it was something that they're born into. Although Lord Krishna says the exact opposite in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, text number 13, I guess, wherein he says, Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam, I created these four Varnas or classifications of men, and Guna Karma Vibhagasha. They are categorized according to guna and karma, quality and inclination towards work. If it were a hereditary thing, then Krishna would have said Janma or Yoni or something along those lines, but he did not. And in fact, in many places, the opposite is stated. But still, there are many who think that, well, my father was a great Brahmana, or my mother, and therefore now I am too. That still goes on in some places. So we should learn from this example that a Brahmin is something very special, a great teacher, highly qualified, uh, but there are a lot of qualifications, there are a lot of prerequisites. And that's why it's mentioned so many places in the Shastra. If we find one who's really qualified, then it's such a valuable asset in human society. Someone who can guide, who can assist, who can give valuable instruction, and someone who can engage others in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead in their progressive spiritual journey. Such a great asset, and yet quite rare. So let's hear about those qualities. As we know in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 18, right? He says something, and I'm going to remember it in just a moment. Where he says, Samadamas tapa shocham kshantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma svabhava jam. At the Brahmanas, 9 of their qualities are to be samaha, equipoise, damaha, self-controlled, tapaha, austere. If this is tickling your fancy, if you find this really interesting, you might be a Brahmana. What is it? 18, text number 9? No. Samatamastapa sokcham kshantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam. And then this word astikyam is very interesting. Sorry, it's text number 42. To be peaceful, a shamaha. To be damaha, self-controlled. Tapa, austere. This is a really important one, austere. I'll tell you what Krishna says about the Brahmana's austerity. Later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as part of the Uddhava Gita, Krishna gives so many valuable instructions about Varna and Ashrama. to Uddhava. And one of the things he says to Uddhava is that Brahmanasya hi dehoyam kshudra kamaya neshate krichaya tapase cheha pretyananta sukhaya cha. He says that the body of a Brahmana, it's not meant to enjoy physical, sensual pleasure like a kshudra. Kshudra kamaya neshate. The body's not meant for that. It's an incompatible type of pleasure for the Brahmana. Rather, what does the Brahmana enjoy? Tapas, austerity. The Brahmana should enjoy tapasya and pratyananta sukhayacha and focus on unlimited happiness after death. That's what the Brahmana's body is meant for. I found that really interesting that Krishna is saying that to Uddhava. It's built in to their form that they enjoy austerity more than comfort, luxuries, and pleasures. And being so qualified by the performance of austerity, then they are able to give benediction and blessing. And their words, their ashirvad, never go in vain. But without that qualification, Brahmanas, as Prabhupada said, are just eating on behalf of the Lord. They're supposed to be the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if they're not qualified by preaching, speaking on behalf of the Lord, then they're just eating on behalf of the Lord. What is it? Nanda Maharaj says something about Brahmanas too, where he says that when they're free from envy, untruthfulness, unnecessary pride, grudges, disturbances by the opulence of others, then their blessings never go in vain. So this is a very high qualification. But imagine someone who has such power. It's very powerful. They really can speak satyam, ashirvada. They can speak truth into the world and create a result in the environment just by the power of their speech. Ashirvada, which is the exact translation of benediction, which is Latin for good speech. Ashirvad, to give a blessing benediction. If a Brahmin is highly qualified by being austere, tapasya, by being truthful, free from envy and grudges and disturbances by the opulence of others, then yes, just by speaking, they can enact a real result in the environment, and especially a result in the consciousness of their listeners. This is very powerful spiritual science, actually. But it depends on a very purified, qualified consciousness of that Brahmana. And that consciousness depends on a very purified, qualified body as well. And so if someone claiming to be a Brahmana is actually employed by someone like Hiranyakashipu, or if someone claiming to be a Brahmana is actually very sensual and lazy in their study, then they cannot have such effect when speaking. And that's pretty much the sum and substance of all of society's problems. As Prabhupada would say time and time again, that there is no head on the social body. There are no qualified brahmanas who, being so pure, can guide and lead others and not become corrupted themselves. There's very few. So before we consider ourselves to be so qualified just because Gurudev gave me the sacred thread and some mantras like a noose around my neck, and we should consider, are we meeting these qualifications described here, even described by Krishna? Shamadamastapa shokcham. Kshantir, to be tolerant of everything. Arjavam, to be honest. Actually, Krishna says to be clean twice. Shocham and Arjavam is to be clean and to be pure. So how about that? You have to be very clean. And then he says Gyanam Vijnanam, that should be obvious, to cultivate knowledge, religiousness, knowledge and wisdom. And then Krishna says Astikyam. which is a very interesting word in Sanskrit. Asti means it is, or he is. Like one strange fellow from Germany usurped the use of the swastika, which means suastika, just a symbol of auspiciousness. It is good. Su asti, it is good. So astikyam in describing the Brahmana means a, the strong conviction that the Lord is. He is there. He is the friend of all living entities, the proprietor of all planets, the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Such conviction is called astikyam, which Prabhupada translates as religiousness. A great example of that is the Brahmana Dadichi Muni. I'll tell you a little story about Dadichi for those who are listening. Dadichi Muni was deputed by Lord Narayan himself to give up his body, to give his bones to Indra, so Indra could make some sort of weapon to deal with his own politics back at home, to fight against some demon or something. Indra was losing in this fight, and he approached Lord Narayan, who said, the great Brahmana, Dadichi Muni, is so austere. His body has become so powerful because of his austerity that you could use his bones to make a weapon and kill this demon. Now imagine, Indra went to Dadichi Muni. He's like, hey, the Lord told us that we can use your bones to make a weapon, so I can deal with my intergalactic politics over here. But Dadichi Muni, he's just really just such an example, an exemplar of this astikyam. He said, well, if that's what the Lord wants, just complete conviction that whatever the Lord desires, I'll give up this body, no problem. That's very exemplary. This is the Brahmana. A lifetime of austerity and service, and then, yeah, give up the body because Narayan says that my bones should be used in Indra's service. Fine. I mean, that takes a lot of faith. Generally, we all have a price. And that's why our Brahminical qualifications are lacking. We all have a price that we will tolerate and will be very happy Hare Krishna devotees to some degree, as long as things are going well, as long as there are plenty of comforts there and I'm getting what I want and some gratification for my ego and everyone's recognizing how important and significant I am. Then we'll tolerate, we'll continue to practice, we'll continue to be devoted. But when there's some difficulty, when there's some serious challenge, then most of us, we have a price. We won't do it. Or the contrary is true, that if there's too much opulence available, too much sense gratification available, then, we can tap out. This has happened to some devotees. You can imagine that if someone said to you, I'll give you $1,000 to give up Krishna consciousness, you'd say, of course not. I've never. And if someone says, I'll give you $1,000,000 to give up Krishna consciousness, you might stop for a second and think, I mean, I could still be devoted to the Lord in other ways. I'll give you $100,000,000 to stop practicing Krishna consciousness. $100,000,000. You'd say, well, okay, I'll do it. We all have a price, except for the Brahmana. And that's what's being described by Srila Prabhupada in this purport. The Brahmana is not employed. The Brahmana cannot be bought. The Brahmana enjoys austerity. Their body is meant for austerity, not for kshudra kama aneshite. They don't enjoy that. And so therefore they cannot be bought, they cannot be compromised. And therefore that's a real leader in society. So that's astikyam. Uh, sorry for just going on, but the only subject of this purport is about brahmanas. So I'll say one more. Because Krishna describes 9 qualities of the brahmanas, but there's even more said in the Mahabharata. Dharmascha satyam cha tapas. Dharmascha satyam cha tamas tapascha. Amatsaryam hrishtitikshana Yagyashta danam cha shutim. Driti cha. I think Vratani Dvadasa Brahmanasya. Dvadasa. There's described 12 qualities of the Brahmanas. But again, it's more or less the same as what Krishna had said in Bhagavad Gita. Dharma, practicing Dharma, Satyam, being truthful, Tapas, again, a Brahmana should enjoy austerity. That should really be their pleasure. So we can ask ourselves, am I very Brahminical? Do I enjoy austerity? Fasting, uh, bathing 3 times a day, only speaking truthful words, never saying anything else or any prajalpa. Do I really enjoy that? That's what the Brahman enjoys. Dharmascha satyam cha tapas, tamascha, again, tamas, self-control, amatsaryam, being completely free from envy or covetousness. What somebody else has is totally uninteresting to me. I have my lot based on my karma or whatever work that I've done, and that's enough. But if someone is thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had more like this other person? Why don't I just take that from them? That is not the qualification. Amatsaryam hrish. Hri means to be very modest. We have a dear god brother in New Zealand, Hriman Krishna Prabhu, and he is very modest. To be modest is a qualification of the Brahmana, not doing anything in excess. Amatsayam hrish titikshana. Titikshava, of course, means to be tolerant. Titikshana vasuya, and anasuya, again, non-envious. Yagyas, to perform sacrifice. Yagyas cha dharmas. No, we already had dharma. Yagyas cha danam. Cha damas. I can't remember now. Yagyas cha danam cha shuti. To always be hearing and preaching the scriptures. Actually, the Manu Samhita, Manu, he says that the topmost austerity that a Brahmana can perform is to study the Shastra every day. So congratulations, everybody, performing an austerity, being awake and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. That's actually the topmost austerity for the Brahmana. Uh, Driti Shrutim Cha, Driti meaning being very steady and fixed. Vratani Vaidvadasa Brahmanasya. So these 12 qualities define the Brahmana. And last but not least, the 6 types of work. I'm giving all sorts of numbers here. We did 9, we did 12, and now 6. This is what the Brahmanas are meant to do. Multiples of 3, very convenient and helpful. But again, Krishna tells Uddhava that all 3 of the, we should say, higher orders of society, the Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Shudras, are meant to give charity. But only the Brahmanas are meant to receive charity. All 3 of the higher orders are meant to study the Shastra. Only the Brahmanas are meant to teach the Shastra. And all 3 of the higher orders are meant to perform sacrifice, but only the Brahmanas are meant to perform sacrifice on behalf of someone else. So there are the 6 kinds of Brahminical work, which many are familiar with, yajan, yachan, patana, patana, dana, pratigraha. But only the Brahmanas are meant to receive charity, to teach the Shastra, and to perform sacrifice on behalf of others. Because by those activities, they're having an enormous effect on human society, and so they must be very qualified. Generally, the Vaishyas and Kshatriyas have a bit more motivation, depending on the purity of the consciousness, and that effect might be far-reaching. Like as we see in American politics, at best, we get some Vaishyas in higher office, and then that has an effect on everybody. And then we think, well, yeah, maybe I should become a billionaire. Maybe that's the real success in life. So the Brahmana is the one who's supposed to teach. The Brahmana is the one who's supposed to perform sacrifice or engage others in sacrifice and to receive charity. So, Hare Krishna, we've said a lot about Brahmanas because that is the subject of the purport here. Just trying to stay true to Srila Prabhupada. And again, the sons of Shukracharya are not qualified because they're employed by Hiranyakashipu, and employment for their teaching is compromising what purity they're supposed to have. If there are real brahmanas around, it's very special, it's very powerful, and we should try. We should try to become qualified. Srila Prabhupada wanted that. He wanted to have Brahminical communities, and we should try. But at the end of the day, ultimately, we should become devotees first and foremost, even if we're not qualified in other ways. Being a devotee is, in fact, superior even to a brahmana, as it says in many verses. One which, hold on, come on, brain, it's in there somewhere about who's qualified to be a guru, even a dog eater. What is that verse? Taraka Prabhu, you remember that verse? Even a dog eater. I can't remember it. And of course, Lord Chaitanya says that I'm not a sannyasi, I'm not a brahmana, I'm just Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayor Dasa Dasa Anudasa. Kiba Vripa, Kibra Nyasi, Shudra Kenino, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, Se Guru Hoy. That actually, if someone is a devotee and knows the science of Krishna, actually they can be guru regardless of being a Vipra, a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or Shudra. It doesn't matter. So devotee supersedes all of these things. Being devoted to Sri Sri Radha Damodar, serving their lotus feet, hearing and chanting about Radha and Krishna, and encouraging others to hear and chant the holy names of the Lord, actually trumps all of this Brahminical stuff. A Brahmana is ultimately the bodily concept of life. It's valuable and superlative they may be. Still, it is the bodily concept of life, whereas a devotee is something very special, something very spiritual. And ultimately, that's more important than Brahminical qualifications. Still, somebody help me reconcile this. Prabhupada did want a Brahminical community. He wanted devotees to become qualified as Brahmanas and really to lead all of society. I just read in one purport somewhere, it was in the Ishopanishad, where he's talking about how we should lead all of human society all around the world. I don't know if ISKCON's ready yet, but we should take that seriously. Why not? The fluctuations of human society are changing all the time. Right now, the Christians have the most influence worldwide, but that is waning. The Muslims are catching up, and they will certainly be the majority worldwide within most of our lifetimes. So why not? It's entirely possible. What if the Hare Krishnas were the most influential? Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, some would argue, and let's not open up a whole can of worms, that there's a very small section of society that has a very large influence. But I will not say in case they're listening. So it is entirely possible, it is not unfeasible, that the devotees can become so qualified, so naturally qualified, that even great leaders of society would want to take their guidance and affect their influence, and in this way shape society more towards progressive spiritual life. We shouldn't think that it's just wishful thinking. It is entirely possible, and it has happened before. So Prabhupada, he had that vision. He really believed it, and so he recognized qualified brahmanas are so important, and he wanted Brahminical culture in addition to being pure devotees, Vaishnava culture. So Hare Krishna, I said a lot about brahmanas. That was very clear. If there are any questions or doubts or disagreements or additions, feel free to contribute that to this conversation now. Jai. Parameshwari's got a real hand up. Most devotees are raising their digital hand, but she's so kind to actually show us her actual hand. Haribo.
Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for a very, very nice class. And it's always so nice to hear you recite the verses and actually explaining the meanings of the Sanskrit is very powerful. I have some kind of trying to kind of grasp my head about this topic, so I'm not even sure what questions I have, but I think I would just um, kind of try to process this aspect of this topic that we talk about. So you were mentioning when you talk about a brahmana, I guess I'm wondering, like, there's the quality of brahmanas and there's also the caste of brahmana, right? And when you say like Srila Prabhupada wants to have a Brahminical culture, I guess I was trying to think, okay, so someone like a pure devotee can have qualities, all qualities of a brahmana, but they may be in different varna. And so how to reconcile that? And then when you said like Srila Prabhupada wants to have qualified brahmana in addition to pure devotees, and I was wondering, like, in a sense, if devotees become Krishna consciousness and become pure devotee, they already become qualified brahmana. So are they two separate things, or are they like one thing? Am I making sense here?
Mm-hmm. No, there's just, yes, thank you. There is just the qualities. There isn't really a caste and a hereditary caste. Krishna says guna karma vibhagasha. Someone who has that quality is in that varna. Doesn't matter where they're born. The reason why this idea of a caste exists is because generally, and especially in traditional societies, children turn out a lot like their parents, generally speaking. If your parents are very qualified in one particular way, you'll likely imbibe those same qualities. And so it is somewhat of a reliable metric for knowing, is this person a brahmana? Well, their parents were such good brahmanas, so likely they'll do the same. But Krishna says very clearly, guna karma. If someone has the qualities and they're inclined towards that type of work, then that is their varna. It's that simple. And so, you might have the sacred thread on. Gurudev gave you a chance to chant the mantras. But if you like just doing labor, then you're Shudra. And it's fine. Actually, we're just trying to be devotees anyway. And if someone is employed as a laborer, that's just their karma that they ended up just being a laborer. But actually, they're inclined to study the Shastra and teach the Shastra and to be very austere, then they're actually a Brahmana. It's simply the qualities. Everything has to be judged by its qualities. If we're judging an orange, we're not going to say, well, it's purple. No, if it's orange, then it is an orange. The quality determines the thing. So, yes, it all comes down to those qualities, how they're manifest, how they're used in the service of the Lord, and the inclination towards work that a person does. A person's quality can change in the association of another person. And Narada Muni says this in this famous verse. What was that verse? As base metal, what is it? As bell metal can be changed to gold by some chemical process. A person can be changed into a brahmana by initiation by a very qualified person. And that was Srila Prabhupada's conviction. That's why I recited this verse a lot. I can't remember the entirety of it, but it's mentioned several places in the Shastra that just like bell metal can be changed into gold by some chemical process that's been lost to humanity. And probably good that it's been lost because we don't really need that sort of alchemy. Things are messed up enough. But so similarly, a person can be changed into a brahmana. A person's varna can change in association. And so associating with a very qualified spiritual master can change our quality. And many of us experience that. We remember how wild and crazy we used to be. And now some purification is going on by the association of Srila Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada. So I hope that addresses your question. The Varna is determined by the quality. But a devotee's quality is very different. It's not just austerity. It's not just self-control. I mean, is Radharani austere? Is she self-controlled? No, she's very overwhelmed. An ecstatic love for Krishna. Is that Brahminical? No, it's the highest perfection. We can barely even understand it. The residents of Vrindavan, are they studying the Shastra all day and doing sacrifices? No. There aren't even any temples in Vrindavan. One of Hridayananda Goswami's more controversial points, actually probably one of his less controversial points. Everything he says is controversial. Here's one of the lesser controversial, where he reminded everybody that there are no temples in Vrindavan. When Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd man, they were doing a sacrifice for Indra annually. They don't even have a temple. They're just out in a field somewhere. They just like pick a spot. And it happened to be the same spot where Krishna was hanging out after killing Dhenukasura. Can't remember now. So Damastapa, Shokcham, Kshantir, Arjavam, Evacha. These sort of qualities don't necessarily exist in the devotees. In the devotees, there's only the quality of just pleasing Krishna. That's the qualification. I mean, there are 26 Vaishnava qualities that are listed by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. But ultimately, it's just pleasing Krishna. No matter what. No matter what external situation is going on, no matter where they're coming from, what they're struggling with, a devotee just pleases Krishna. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Rutama. So we are meant to please Krishna. We're trying to become devotees, just interested in pleasing Krishna. That is the most important. And if we can develop Brahminical qualities by some practice and by association with qualified people, that'll also be very useful in service to Krishna. But the priority, of course, is to become pure devotees of Krishna. However, there are some who disagree with me, and they can speak if they like. Prabhupada did say that half of his mission is unfulfilled because he does not create varna and ashrama. Generally, there is this a bit of a tension between what's called Bhagavata Marg and Pancharatrika Marg, the path of worship according to the rules and regulations, which is generally Varna and Ashrama, the progressive path of worship, Varna, Ashrama, Charavata, Vishnu, Aradhya, something. And then there's the Bhagavat Marg, which is just devotional service, just pure devotion, just hearing and chanting about Krishna, engaging others in hearing and chanting. It doesn't matter if we're qualified, it does not matter if it's the right time or place. It does not matter if all sorts of rituals have been performed before or after. It does not matter what day of the week it is or where the position of the moon. None of that matters. Just hearing and chanting about Krishna. That's the Bhagavat Marg. And then there's the Pancharatrika Marg, much more according to rules and regulations, following certain principles at certain times of the day, according to certain qualifications. So there's always a little tension between those two. And it exists within our community as well. The opinion of Bhakti Yashadev is that the Bhagavat Marg is more important. We chant Hare Krishna, we go back home, back to Godhead. If we become qualified as Brahmanas, great. If not, c'est la vie. Sorry, I've rambled on. There's too long of an answer. Perhaps someone else would like to add, or
That's really brilliant, Prabhu. Thank you. That's really, really brilliant.
so let's chant Hare Krishna. Targa Prabhu, yes. Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for another very nice class. This question of Vaishnava versus Brahmana. More than once, I heard Srila Prabhupada describe the Brahmanas as being, relative to Vaishnavas. If you wanted to understand what the relationship is or how they're situated relatively to one another, he explained that the Brahmanas are Kanishta Adhikaris.
Interesting.
Which is surprising for many of us, but he said that more than once. The Brahmanas are Kanishta Adhikaris. They are not necessarily devotees at all. It is not uncommon that a Brahmin is not even a devotee, or they may be a devotee of some other deity, a demigod, or they may still possess the qualities of a Brahmana. They may still do the work of a Brahmana and yet not be a devotee of Krishna or Vishnu. So they're understood to be the Kanishta Adhikaris. They have a bunch of wonderful qualities, but devotion to Krishna or Vishnu is not necessarily one of them. They may be devoted to some other deity. But my understanding also is that when Krishna says guna karma, these two qualifications must coexist. Srila Prabhupada stated many times that someone may have the qualities of a Brahmana, but if he does the work of a Shudra, he's a Shudra. It's not, he has to actually do the work of a Brahmana. Otherwise, his work becomes the determining factor. If he's actually a Brahmana, if he actually has the qualities of a Brahmana, he will do the work of a Brahmana. If he's doing some other work, that is an indication that he's not truly a Brahmana. He's lacking in some regard, somehow or other. He's not really qualified as a Brahmana, because a Brahmana will never accept employment. A true Brahmana will never accept employment. So if he does, he immediately becomes Shudra. Anyway, that few points I thought I'd offer. It's interesting. I think that Srila Prabhupada describes the Brahmanas as the Kanishta Adhikaris.
Yeah, that is interesting.
In terms of where they are situated in terms of bhakti.
Thank you,
Prabhu. All I
Prabhu.
got. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I remember that verse, which gives a good comparative analysis of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And it says, Satkarma nipino vipro mantra tantra visharada Vaishnava, no, Avaishnava gurur nasyad Vaishnava svapacho guru. That even a scholarly Brahmana who's expert in all subjects of Vedic knowledge is unfit to become a spiritual master without being a Vaishnava or expert in the science of Krishna consciousness. But a person born in a family of a lower caste, actually says svapacho, dog eaters, can become a spiritual master if he is a Vaishnava or Krishna conscious. And I think that term dog eater really rings louder in America because here we love dogs. We don't eat them. But maybe Parameshwari can testify that in the Far East, some people are still eating dogs. Why not? Anything goes. I'm surprised Americans aren't eating dogs, to be honest. But the point is that, being a Vaishnava is the qualification. That's very special. And about work is my last point, and I'll let everybody go. Yes, there's many types of Brahminical work. Gurudev told me, actually at my second initiation, well, he told all the devotees, and then he emphasized it to me again, that very Brahminical work is book distribution. He said book distribution is very Brahminical work. Yajana. So to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, to help people to read Srila Prabhupada's books, to inspire them, to appreciate Prabhupada's books is very Brahminical work, according to some of our spiritual master. So if you're looking for some Brahma Karma, join Dina Palika on Saturday. She's doing book distribution every Saturday for this month. It's our attempt to be somewhat engaged in the marathon. Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. If there's nothing else, I should let everybody get on with their life. Deer are North America's dogs. That's right. It's all gross at the end of the day. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.